First of all, thank you both for taking part in this. Let's start with a question that a lot of people knew about this purchase of this huge retirement chain when it first happened. It was approved by the Canadian government, by the Innovation Minister, and under the Investment Canada Act. What's changed?
Well, what's changed is that almost a year to the date after Ottawa approved the Anbang transaction with acquiring Retirement Concepts, the Chinese government seized Anbang. They charged the CEO with fraud and embezzlement, sentenced him to 18 years in prison. And then a few months later, it was revealed that the Chinese government had transferred ownership of Anbang to the state. So at that point, there should have been a lot of questions raised about, well, would they still be in compliance under the Investment Canada Act? For us, we've been watching this transaction for some time and had a lot of questions about it. We know the critics originally pointed out concerns about the ownership we thought were right. When the Chinese government comes and seizes Anbang, we think that raises a whole host of issues. And now, given the tensions with China, between Canada and China, we think that makes this a much more sensitive investment and for anyone who's affiliated or has any association with Anbang in Canada.
You've sent this letter to the Privacy Commissioner. What are the privacy concerns?
Well, there's not only just the workers that are in these systems now that have their personal issues related to their privacy, potentially exposed or used or marketed. You also have the customers. So the difficulty that you have is whether the net benefit also protects jobs, but also person's information and privacy, which is necessary. Even in the general sense, people's information, all your data, is mined now and is seen as a new gold.
So who are we talking about? We're talking about workers? We're talking about people living in retirement homes?
We're talking about people that are working in the homes. We're talking about people that are living in the homes. We're talking about in the hotels, the customers. All that data accumulation is valuable in a market economy that's free, but it's also available and valuable for a market economy that may not be free, like the Chinese one. So there's a couple of issues that need to be looked at by the Investment Canada Act, is whether or not, because you can actually prescribe a duration of time of a Canadian takeover, and also we have certain international agreements about privacy with some countries, but not others.
Michelle, you raised an example of a massive data breach involving a hotel corporation in the United States or worldwide.
Worldwide, yes. A few months ago, it was revealed that Marriott Corporation had been subject to a massive cyber attack, which has been traced back to the Ministry of State Security in China, which, again, this affected 500 million customers worldwide and compromised their personal information, and it happened over a 4-year period, which we think is very alarming. And during that period, we understand there were other cyber attacks on other sectors in the economy, particularly in the States around healthcare, health insurers, and we think that we believe this exposes other hotels as well and creates other risks.
And then that opens the door to the concern about the retirement homes as well.
It does. I mean, with Anbang controlling very sensitive information of seniors, personal medical information, financial information, we raise these questions with the government about who's really how do they manage control of very sensitive information? How are they ensuring that their information is safe? And how are they ensuring that the operators who are managing these companies on their behalf have set up protocols to protect their data and data across their system?
Brian, you're asking for changes. You're asking for the Privacy Commissioner to look into this. Are the changes you would like to see in it, because this was a $1 billion transaction when the Chinese took over, the Chinese company, and now the Chinese state took over Retirement Concepts. Are you asking for changes in the Investment Act or in changes in the Privacy Commissioner's powers, or both?
Actually, both. The first and foremost is to get the Privacy Commissioner to evaluate whether or not he can actually look into this and come back with anything that's substantial in terms of inclusion of the net benefit and also the terms and conditions of the takeover, especially to the subsequent one after that. And then also the Investment Canada Act, again, we've called for greater transparency with regards to also following and evaluating foreign takeovers in general, and we have yet to see that. So that's the accountability aspect. One thing that hasn't been really looked at with regards to this that should not be underestimated too is that all the other companies that do business with these corporations that are actually now in the control of foreign ownership and their information data, when they do into joint ventures, when they actually do bidding on contracts, when they actually fail or succeed to do business with them, all those are also potential exposures because
all vulnerable.
Yeah, they're all vulnerable. And that's the thing that we have to look. So we have a competition issue that can emerge. We need a modernization here, and that's the most important thing. Step one for the Privacy Commissioner is that's actually a rapid response in terms of how a parliamentary system can work right now, is to get their evaluation as to whether or not there's enough protection in the current legislation. I suspect that's not the case, but this is step one.
Last question. Last question. That is obviously the concern. I asked the question during the press conference. Is it? I mean, private corporations will have access to this information as well. But is the concern particularly because this is a Chinese state corporation? It's the Chinese state that's in charge now.
Right. I think it creates its own unique set of challenges. Whereas when we're dealing with American companies that we have very serious concerns about how they handle information, we do see a pathway there for trying to regulate them and their activity. With China, they play by different rules. Okay. And so we don't feel like we have a pathway there at this point.
Okay, I want to thank both of you for taking the time. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.